Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show. Dr. Baker, welcome to the Principal Podcast. Happy to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Let's jump straight into it. What got you into consulting, Dr. Baker? What's the story behind the business hospital?
Absolutely. And so it's actually a little bit different than consulting, although most people think it is initially. But I invented business health 10 years ago. It'll actually be 10 years on July 4th. And when I say business health, is that I invented a way of looking at a business identically how a medical professional looks at the body. And so with that, there's 22 different things every business has to have in order to be healthy. And there's over 1,100 inputs that make up those 22 different elements. We call that our BHI, which is a business health index, which is very similar to a body mass index. And so it's our primary methodology for how we provide treatment to our patients. And so when you ask me, how did we get started with that? I initially was a management consulting firm. And so I was looking at my team, and we had a great conversation in the conference room. We said, hey, guys, where do people go when they just have a problem? Does anyone know where to go, who to call, what to do? And we all had different answers. It was everything from Googling to going to your chamber of commerce to asking your uncle. And we said, all right, but what if you got shot? Wouldn't you just go to the hospital? And the answer was yes. And we said, well, what if you weren't feeling well for an extended period of time? Wouldn't you just go to the hospital? And it was, yeah. And what if you came home and a loved one was incapacitated? What would you do? You would just go to the hospital. There wouldn't be any reference checking. There wouldn't be any referrals. You would just get to the hospital because you believe in the fact that they know more about the human body than you do. I said, what if it was your dog or your hamster or your snake? They're like, you would just go to the vet. I said, of course. But not with business. With business, you're guessing all the time as to where to go, what to do, how to do. And I didn't think that was appropriate. I thought that considering that business is so important to the livelihood of the entire planet, not just where I am here in the U.S. In the U.S., it's the backbone of the entire ecosystem. We said there should be a way to standardize how people look at business. And that was the genesis of the business hospital.
Love that. What is the problem that you solve, Dr. Baker? What is it that you help businesses achieve exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. And so our viewpoint is health. And when we say health, one, we are industry agnostic. We do not have a certain class, style, or type of business. It could be a person that has a thought in their head about a business type, or it could be a legacy business. It could be a mom and pop. It can literally be anything. And so when we say we help someone or that we provide treatment, our treatment is understanding the framework of what is considered to be healthy versus what is unhealthy. So let me explain some of the nuances and the differences. Some of my work looks like business coaching because you have to work with the business owner. There's some motivation, there's some guidance and some provision that's provided to the owner so that they can do better. And another component looks like consulting, when you take a very specific strategy that has some KPIs involved, and you're going to execute those for whatever you deem to be better for that business. But when it comes to health are known metrics that are standardized that say, for an example, let's say it was legal. If I go into a business and I say, what do your subscriber or subcontractor agreements look like? And if they don't have those agreements, they are unhealthy. And so we're not the legal entity that's going to make them for them, but we could send them back to their attorney, or we could bring in our legal wing, and that legal wing will go ahead and take care of that. Another example of health is if we come in and we say, have you had a formal risk assessment done? And that patient says, well, what is that? I'm not sure what that is. I have insurance, but I don't know if I had a formal risk assessment. Well, we know that they're unhealthy at that time. And so we'll either work with their insurance provider or we'll go to our insurance wing and then we'll provide that risk assessment. One last example of that is if we go in and we say, can we see your pro forma? And they don't have one. Well, we know that the business is economically unhealthy. Then we're going to ask to see their financial strategist. And if they don't have one, we're going to appoint one. So hopefully you can understand that health is making sure that your business has everything that it's supposed to have with the right parameters and the right inputs for decision making and for execution.
So maybe coming from a different culture of how we see health in the US versus in France, where I'm coming from, but also Europe. So I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball question at you already right now, Dr. Baker. Sorry that it's so early in the interview. But so if we really push the analogy to human health to the extreme, right? Sometimes constantly thinking that you may have a problem and looking into these problems causes more stress that actually generates the sickness, rather than just being like, hey, when something goes wrong, I'll go and check it out. And if nothing happens in the meantime, I'm just gonna, eat healthy, do some sports 3 times a week, and walk a bit each and every day, not drink too much, and go and take the sun. So how do you make that link with business?
That's a really good position, and I've never been asked that in 10 years. We're in over 15 countries. I have over 1,700 patients, and you're the first one to ask that. So you can load up a patient with entirely too much. Now they're thinking about too much, they're doing too much, and that actually does create other ailments, just like anything else with the human body. However, we also know in the medical world that early detection saves lives. And so if you're being screened for cancer, even if you think you're living a healthy lifestyle, it could be based on genetics and heredity. And so with that, we look at certain businesses to ensure that we're not going to load you up with burdens that you can't carry, but we're also going to seek for early detection as well. And so with our BHI, for an example, we're going to look to see if you have certain things in place. And then we're going to tell you, look, right now, you don't have to have these things here. But what you're trying to do, you have to have that. So let me give you an example of what I mean. If you are an e-commerce business, well, in an e-commerce business, a supply chain may not be important for you, even though you might have your supply chain coming from a third party that's reputable. You're selling their products, you white labeled it, but to your own, but you've built a business off that. We might say, look, we know the third party company that you're using. That's fine. But what's not okay is your website. It's open for all type of security risk, cybersecurity risk, and now you pose a threat to your customer base. What you can't afford is to have your customer base have a problem because of something you neglected. So we need to go ahead and fix that now. We'll look at your supply chain later. And that way we can give them to them in pieces. So therefore we can give them what's needed today without them worrying so heavily about what may not be a problem tomorrow.
I like that. Who do you solve it for specifically, Dr. Baker? Like, who do you typically work with? Do you have a specific niche, company size, industry, vertical? Who do you decide to work with?
None of those are up to us. Whoever walks in the hospital is who we provide treatment to. We do it in a couple different ways. We have urgent care, which is if a business walks in our hospital, they have a problem, we're going to fix them right then and there without charge or without risk. We just want to help them. The equivalent of that is if someone were shot with a bullet and the ambulance came, they're not going to ask you for insurance. They're going to try to save your life. And so with that, we treat it the exact same way. However, if we have to admit you and we think that there's ongoing treatment, then we're going to give you what we call as a copay or a subsidy. So it's like an insurance company where they'll pay the bulk of it if you have insurance, and then you pay your copay. Well, we have the same thing here where we have companies that subsidize. So when you ask for who are we looking for, our ultimate patient is any business owner of any type. However, we do work with economic development centers, chambers of commerce, large corporations that have a special interest in smaller business, municipalities and governments, anyone that believes that they have a vested interest in businesses performing better or being healthy or essentially not closing. We call that business morbidity, so the death of a business, anyone that has an interest in that. But overall, the business is irrelevant. The type is irrelevant. I might be dealing with a catering company one moment and an entity dealing with neuromorphic computing the next. It literally is anything and everything.
Okay, I love this. I just love analogies with the human body. So hopefully you won't mind me going that direction, Dr. Baker.
Not at
So
all.
what's an analogy that my mentor used when we were also like searching like what's our niche, who we should focus on helping, and so on. He was like, picture you have a huge back problem, right? And you need back surgery.
Yes.
Continuing with the hospital analogy, and you have two options, two surgeons, both extremely senior, extremely talented, extremely experienced. One has done 10,000 surgeries, right? A
Hmm.
thousand gut surgeries, 1,000 brain surgeries, 1,000 heart surgeries, 1,000 back surgeries, 1,000, and so on and so forth. And he was like, the second one has done 10,000 back surgeries.
Yeah.
Who are you going to see, and how much of a premium are you willing to make? Are you willing to pay, sorry, to go for the second one? And when we think about business, I feel it's a bit the same, right? When I have a problem, I'm not only looking at something who says they can help. I'm looking at whether they have solved it for themselves first. If not, have they helped other people like me go from where I am to where I want to go, right? So having that, being able to relate to the type of people that one is helping is, I feel, something important. How do you think about that in your positioning and in the way you welcome patients to the business hospital?
Absolutely. Well, very well articulated. And it's actually a fantastic position and really important to talk about. My experience has demonstrated that both directions are right. So when you say they're right, well, I'm going to use a sport analogy, a big sports fan, been an athlete my whole life. Well, you can win a championship a number of ways. However, you can't win a championship if your foundation isn't there. So with that, I'm going to look at one, foundationally, which surgeon is as good, because you've done something a lot of times, you could have done something a lot of times poorly. So we need to have one, the foundation first. Then number two, we have to determine how nuanced is the surgery. So if we then apply that to business, for an example, I'm a generalist. However, my PhD is in business and leadership. I'm also certified in finance. I'm really good at finance. I am not the best at it. So anytime we start talking finance, Joe Faison, our financial strategist, that's the one that's going to come in and start looking at income statements, your pro formas, your valuations, so on and so forth. However, I'm really good with legal, but I'm not an attorney. But anything legal pops up, we've got 7 different attorneys that are going to come in. We've got large corporations and we've got boutique firms that come in. But as a generalist, I can come in just like a primary care physician and say, your spinal cord is unhealthy. Why? Because you've got this problem, and that problem, and it's going to cause problems that are going to kind of spider web off of that. What we need to do is bring a specialist in here while you can have a generalist there. The reason why generalist is really important is that you can see how all of it works. When you have a specialist, they can't always see how it all works. So they're really good in their silo, but they don't understand what happens to the other side. So if I go back to sport, if you're an offensive coordinator, you really know offense, but you don't always understand what your offense is doing to the defense. You need someone that has that holistic picture. So at the business hospital, we take a wide approach with standardization, with specialists that spider web off to help us with nuances.
Great answer. How do you, and I should rephrase this, what has worked for you, Dr. Baker, to, I'm not talking about sales just yet, I'm talking about getting people to knock on the hospital's door. What has worked for you marketing-wise and branding-wise to attract those potential customers and get them to come at the business hospital?
So for us, I know you weren't mentioning sales, but sales is literally the framework for all business. It's the first unit that business has to understand and experience and realize. I was number one in sales in 5 different industries over a 20-year span. So with that, I understand what sales means as a personal executor of that skill set. When I created the business hospital, I did it the opposite of my skill set. And you say, what do you mean you did it the opposite? Well, sales has a lot to do with prospecting. It has a lot to do with cultivation of clients and customers and the consumer base. It has a lot to do with conversion ratio, so on and so forth. When I created the business hospital, I didn't want that reality. I said, we have to position ourselves to where people walk in. We're only going to take who walks in. So I have a fundamental belief that hospitals shouldn't sell their services. They should only be available for when someone has a problem. So that became very difficult for a year and a half for me to make sure that we were positioned appropriately. So when we say position, when you look at, let's say, a chamber of commerce, for an example, and let's say that chamber of commerce has 2,000 members in it. Well, when those members go to that chamber and they say, we need help with something, they say a great place you can go for help is the business hospital. And then they subsidize that treatment for them and they walk them in and act as their insurance company. So that's one way. Another way are hospital wings. So our hospital wings are third-party companies that are contracted to us that give us first right of refusal. So for an example, if I go back to those law firms, one of my law firms is a national law firm that has over 2,500 attorneys in it. So when they run into a business problem that they can't solve legally, they walk them into the business hospital. And they say, you know what, you're going to work with them. But what we do is when we run into a legal problem that's above standardization, we walk them right back into that law firm, just like a medical hospital would. So those are 2 of 17 different ways that we formally constructed our positioning so that patients know that we exist and how to get to us.
So if I understand it properly, Dr. Becker, is it mainly a networking and affiliate partnership business model where there is no outbound, it's only inbound through partners? So the way I like to think about it is there is branding, right, and generating content so that when people see the content repeatedly and then they encounter the problem that you talk about in your content, they're like, you're immediately popping up to mind. Or it's like you build the relationships with all the people who could be the first people think of when they have a problem, and they redirect them to you. So is it a purely inbound affiliate marketing strategy that you have?
It's 100% yes and 100% no. So
Perfect.
Of those 17 different ways, some of them are 100%. That's what you explain is our relationship with the sponsors and our relationship with our business hospital wings. But I also speak 5 or 6 times a month somewhere. So anytime that we're speaking, let's say, for example, I get called in to speak and there's 50 businesses in there, without fail, 10 are going to take treatment. They're going to say, you said some things that we recognize are a problem within our organization or our business. How can you help us? That's a third way. Another way is we have business clinics. Our business clinics are 1 and 2 day events where we'll set up a place of someone who is hosting and we fix problems of a business all day long. Very much. And if you have in France, but we have mammogram trucks that pop up everywhere. And if a woman has had, very, low insurance or hasn't had care or wants to get a checkup, she can go into that mammogram truck. Our business clinics are the same. And we show up, there's no cost to the business, but we fix those businesses all day. But inevitably we pick up a lot of patients from those business clinics. So that's 4 ways of still 17. What we don't do, which would be easier, is that we don't post things. We don't strategically advertise. We have no communication. Everything we have is pulled.
Very interesting. So I decided to move into the United States. So there are more pros for me to be in the US than in France, but I have to hand it to France. One of the things that I think we do well is the healthcare system. So we don't have, how do you call them? Mammal trucks? Mammogram trucks. So we don't have those because healthcare is free, so people can just go and get the checkup when something happens. But I get the analogy, and that does make a lot of sense. So tell me more about sales then. How do you tie all this to a proper sales process? So you speak at an event, you speak in front of 50 people, 10 people become clients, which by the way is unheard of, especially if you do 5 to 6 per month. Like that's a huge acquisition channel. So how do you move from these inbound marketing and pull marketing from the speaking conferences into a conversation, a sales conversation, an SOW, letter of engagement, we rock and roll? What does sales motion look like for you guys?
So it took a lot of crafting because, as a reminder, I wanted it to not look like I was traditionally trained. And I really wanted our business owners to view themselves as patients that are seeking treatment. I don't say, I got a problem, doc. I'm not doing okay. Or I want to do better and I'm not sure how to do it. I'm kind of lost, or I'm taking on more than I can chew. You have to come with something already. Well, you're not going to come to me if you don't believe already that I can help with that. So you would have had to already experience either me, one of my practitioners, one of my wings, or something within the hospital sphere. So in that, if I use the legal example again, if your attorney that's been representing you tells you that they can't fix your business problem, you must go see Dr. Baker, we've eliminated sales at that point. They're saying, look, my attorney said, I got to come in here. If your accountant says, look, we're looking at your ramp up and your burn rate, you're going to have a big economic problem on your hands soon. You need to see somebody, and I can't help you with that. You need to go see the business hospital. Sales have been eliminated. If I'm standing on stage and I was brought in by somebody credible and you spent money to come see what I had to say, but I'm not sitting up giving you a speech, I'm actually talking to the people in the audience saying, tell me what's wrong. Tell me what you've been thinking about. What have kept you up at night? And I give them a real answer that's actionable. They're no longer sitting hearing me speak. They're receiving treatment right then and there. And they're persuaded that if he did that and didn't know me, how much more is he going to know when he gets a chance to look behind the curtain? Once we can take the lab work. And that's why we close, if we want to use the term close at a high rate, but we're not really closing. So what happens is the awareness of, to then we give them an assessment. In that assessment, we're going to put that in there. Then we give them a diagnosis for what further treatment looks like, and they either take treatment or they don't. Just like it is at your medical hospital.
Yeah. Oh, it's so the common term for this is it's consultative selling, right? You start the consultation, here we go, throughout the sales cycle. And I feel in most high-ticket professional services firms, this is what you need to do anyways, right? We don't sign a 5, 6, 7-figure client sometimes just by saying, hey, we are the best. Just like, hey, let's start building together. Let us give you enough so that you trust us and you consider us as the authority, even if you start getting results without us charging you, and then we'll become the obvious choice. Mm-hmm. I like the style, Dr. Baker. So I'm going to throw, oh my God, a third curveball question at you now. Mm-hmm. What's your number one challenge? Who takes care of the business hospital? Who's the business hospital's business hospital? What is one thing that you know, that one nut that you know if you crack, you take the whole thing to the next level? What would that be?
So you say who helps us? Our organization is 3 different entities. So we have the Business Hospital Institute, which is a 501c3, which is a classic nonprofit, what most people think about, but the structure is like a cancer research institute. So inside that institute, it's research going on all day long from the last 150 years about all things business. So not only is it historical data, information, and reference, it's also with emerging information, data, and reference. So if someone wants to know about AI, or if it was a few years ago and it was cryptocurrency, or if it was NFTs, you hear all kind of things, and people want to dabble in all of it. Our institute carries that information, and that information gets linked to the business hospital, which is a 501c6. That is a membership-based organization. So every patient becomes an in-network member, which opens them up to our wings, just like in the insurance world, you have in and out of network. So with that, we provide our treatment through the C6. Then we have Dr. Baker and Associates, the business hospital. That's a for-profit. And so from there, you would call that cosmetic surgery, where we have to come in and do something. For an example, let's say it's a sales cycle. Treatment would help you understand how to build it. The for-profit side, we're going to come in and sell some stuff for you, and we're going to take a commission for what we sold, or we're going to execute something you can't execute. So that ticket item is much, much larger. So when you say, well, what helps me, is really having about 200 individuals within my business hospital that are experts at what they do all around the world, that also contribute to the knowledge bank of the Business Hospital Institute. So therefore, it's not just the wisdom and the guidance of me. I'm the primary decision maker, but I'm leaning on all these other experts to make sure that in given time, we're the smartest people in the room. So really, there's nothing that actually hampers me in that instance. It's more about just aggregating more information and more experts so we can get ahead of the business owners to make them smarter.
So I like the ecosystem. That does make sense. I don't feel it tells me about that one nut though, Dr. Baker. Maybe there isn't, by the way. But like, is there something, and the reason I'm asking this question is, we only interview high-ticket professional service firms. And usually the challenges that one faces is shared by people listening to the show.
Yeah.
And whilst obviously it's a challenge, so it's not fully figured out yet, I feel it's super valuable for the audience who might face the same challenge right now to see how people like them think about that challenge. So is there anything like this for you, or is it pretty much just all figured out?
No. And I understand your question, and hopefully this answer makes good sense around the question. It's a really thoughtful question. I have perfected my craft for the last 6 years. My first 4 years wasn't, but the last 6 years I perfected it. I can rinse and repeat this in my sleep till the Lord calls me home. That is typically not the same reality for other individuals, but the reason why is the desire. So let me give you an example of what I mean by health. I don't see business as year over year. How much money did you make? How much market share did you capture? What your multiplier is? I do not view business that way, and therefore none of my practitioners, wings, or pharmacy members view business in that way. However, you have a scenario where other people see business just like that. When I say they see business that way, they're trying to get from 1 million to 5 million, so they got a problem because they don't know how to scale, whether it's through supply chain, human capital management, distribution channels, positioning, so on and so forth. So now they have an issue. Why? Because their desire is in a place that they haven't mastered yet. Or you have an individual that really is content with where they are. They make $230,000 a year. They have a home, they can raise a family. They don't really want to get bigger, but everyone is telling them they should get bigger. So they get bigger and they implode. Or they're trying to stay where they are, but they don't manage inflation. They don't manage the cost of the geographical area that they're in, or a shift in the industry. And because they're behind, they fail as well. What happens is we have to match our desire with our infrastructure and our framework and create a health metric around it. So in that, for me, because I invented that reality, it's been easy for us. We've perfected it. But we also go into other businesses and say, let us help you match what you want with the framework of what you have. I can tell you what, over my 1,700 patients, one of the biggest issues we have with them is they never match. They'll say, you know what, we want to get into 7 different markets. And we're like, you're only big enough to go into 2. You'll never get to 7. Or we're going to make $20 million and their framework is $3 million. You'll never make it. Or we're going to make $100 million and their industry tops out at 50. So their desire to match the framework. That makes really good sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Dr. Baker,
Right,
ladies and gentlemen. Doctor, if people want to find out more about you.
Go ahead and repeat that.
Oh, sorry. I think we had a bit of lag here. Please go ahead. Finish the sentence, Dr. Baker.
No, I was going to say, if you were a mom and pop shop where you were making Italian sandwiches because you're from Italy, but you also sell the vices that people want, so your lottery, your alcohol, your cigarettes, but you really opened it for the Italian sandwiches that you brought back from when you were a child, you don't have to be much bigger than that street corner restaurant ever. But how you go about doing it is based on your health metric. But if you want to be a large franchise and rival McDonald's, well, now it's no longer about that sandwich. It's about real estate, and it's about processes, and it's about commercialization, and it's about intellectual property. Do you see what I'm saying? That's a different framework.
I do. Mm-hmm.
That's what has to be matched with individuals with problems.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Baker, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Baker, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Really easy. It's the website. I know that feels old to everybody else because everyone else is on socials, but if you go to thebusinesshospital.com, you'll find me, you'll find who we are, and you can communicate with us. Email works amazing for us. I know other people are sending messages out in other ways, but if you send an email to info@thebusinesshospital.com, you will get a response within 30 minutes, and you'll have an appointment within the hour if you so choose and want one. We do have a LinkedIn presence. You look for Dr. J.C. Baker or the Business Hospital, you will find it. We don't post much, but we see what goes on out there. But those are the primary methods.
We will put all the links in the description. I can say one thing for sure, Dr. Baker, is that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview. Me, I'm just adding you.
Yep, here we go.
Thank you so much for coming.
All you need is one. In this
Here
life, all you need is one.
That's what we do. Thank you so much for coming on the Principal Podcast.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you learned valuable strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.